So good afternoon, everyone. This is our first meeting for 2024 of the Joint Committee on the Management of Public Funds. I'm Senator Arthur Ellis, the Senate Chair, and welcome to this very important update from the Maryland Agricultural Resource-Based Industrial Development Corporation, also from Maryland Technology Development Corporation, Department of Commerce, and Meridian Management Group. I would just want to thank everyone for being here. And our Senate members are Senator Pam Bottle, Senator Paul Quarterman, and Senator Mary Delaney James. Love to turn over to Delegate Courtney Watson, the House Chair, to make comments.
Just want to welcome everyone. We have a big agenda today, and I see so far Delegate Shetty's online with us, and I think we should proceed. Handing it back to you, Senator Ellis.
Okay, thank you much. Thank you very much. And so we'll have the update from each of the organizational leaders, secretaries, and members have questions. Please free to ask at the end of each presentation. So first, we have an update on activities of Maryland Agricultural and Resource-Based Industrial Development Corporation, aka MARBIDCO, and Stephen McHenry, Executive Director. Director McHenry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be here with you again this year. For the record, my name is Steve McHenry. I've been the Executive Director of MARBIDCO for nearly 18 years now. So time flies when you're having fun. Last year, you may recall, I gave a pretty extensive overview of MARBIDCO and how we work. I'm going to forego that this year and just jump right into my presentation to sort of tell you what's been happening over the last year. And I'm going to ask Elizabeth if she could put up my presentation. There we go. Next slide, please. Okay, just, I think you all know this. Farming, forestry, and the seafood industries in Maryland are very important. Obviously, they have a significant economic impact, especially in Western Maryland and on the Eastern Shore. But given the fact that half of the state's land area is privately owned, working in farm and forest land, these businesses support all kinds of ecosystem services as well as food production, helping with clean water, all that sort of thing. So very important to the state, important to our quality of life, and has an economic impact across the state, but particularly in 2 of the 3 major rural regions of the state. Next slide, please. In 2019, using 2019 data, Salisbury University's Beacon Economic Research Unit did a report for us, and they found that ag and resource-based business has a $20 billion economic impact across the state. A large majority of that is associated with farming, as we'll see in the next slide. All in ag and resource-based business is about 5% of the state's GDP. So you can see here that agriculture comprises about $16.5 billion of economic impact all in. Forestry, $3.3 billion, and the seafood industry comes in at just under $300 million. That forestry number, unfortunately, is going to be lower when the next report is done. We lost a major paper mill in Western Maryland in 2020, unfortunately. So significant impact, not only in the region there, but across the state for forest landowners and the forest industry. Next slide, please. Just want to give you, again, a recap of where ag and resource-based business has its economic impact. I mentioned the rural areas. The Eastern Shore, obviously very significant, where 70% of the agricultural production by itself it comes from the Eastern Shore. But when you spread out not only the primary production, but the processing of food and fiber products, Central Maryland comes into play in a major way. So actually, 5 counties in Central Maryland have a very significant amount of economic impact from our food and fiber production and processing industry. Next slide, please. In a recap, I think you all know this. We've been established as an instrumentality of the state to help support food and fiber production and processing economic activity. We are a nimble quasi-governmental intermediary organization that we like to say works at the speed of business, and we offer 22 programs today. Next slide, please. Just want to point this out. Go back, please. Our capitalization is nearly complete. This is the final year of funding we're receiving from the state government to capitalize our revolving loan programs and a handful of our small grant programs. So you set us out on a mission in 2007 from legislation that passed in 2006. We've done as you've directed. We've primarily made loans with our core program funding, and we are now on track to be self-sustaining in that category for many years to come. So thank you very much for your support over the years. Next slide, please. Okay, so what's new since last time we met? Well, the 2022 Census of Agriculture was released by USDA. I'll talk about that briefly. You passed some legislation last session, came through the Finance Committee, by the way, Mr. Chairman, as well as the Environment and Transportation Committee in the House. So I'll very briefly mention that. The blue catfish problem continues to be a major issue facing Chesapeake Bay. I'll have a couple of words about that. Food System Resiliency Council issued a report, and it has a recommendation actually to increase some of our funding a bit next year. So I'll talk about that. And finally, we have a new large animal veterinary loan program, and I'll talk about some of our performance metrics over the year. So with that, next slide. Okay, here's the latest and greatest from USDA in terms of the Census of Ag for Maryland. You'll see that, no surprise, the poultry industry remains the largest sector of Maryland's ag economy, and this is by sales, reported sales data, by the way. So nearly half of all farming impact is from the poultry industry. A huge share of that is from the broiler industry on Maryland's eastern shore. Approximately 280 million chickens are produced on the Maryland Delmarva every year, or at least in this year in 2022. It's a major driver of our grain farming activity, wheat, corn, and soybeans. We're actually corn deficit state. We actually have to import corn from the Midwest to feed chickens in Maryland. So poultry is very important. The dairy industry continues to shrink. Unfortunately, we're down under 300 farms, 6% of the total here on the pie chart. And the nursery greenhouse industry remains strong. No surprise there. We have a large residential population in the state that likes to have ornamental products, sod, and that sort of thing. So a pretty large portion of our ag economy. But I'm pleased to say that the table crops, the vegetables and fruits that we so enjoy from the local farms, that is at 4%, and it's growing. It grows every census, and that's something we're keenly interested in seeing grow as well. So that's a quick look at the Census of Ag for Maryland. Next slide, please. And just some more information from the census. We have 12,550 farms in Maryland today. That's up a little bit from the 2017 census. We have over 23,000 farmers, which is an increase of a little over 2,000 from the 2017 census. You can see the gender of our farmers. 62% are men and 38% are women. I would tell you that the USDA made a change in terms of how it looked at gender between this census and the last census. They used to talk about principal farm operators. So there would be one farmer on the farm, he'd be the lead, and then there'd be up to 3 other farmers that would be counted in the census. They've done away with the principal farm operator. So in 2017, 30% of the principal farm operators were women. Now it's 38% of all farmers are women. Just I thought that was interesting, that change that USDA made in its methodology for performing the surveys and the census. Farming is about 41% of farmers have farming as a primary occupation. Average age of farmers, unfortunately, is continuing to grow. We're just under 58 years. It was 57 even last year. And the average age of the beginning farmer, this is a very interesting statistic, has also risen to 47 years of age from 45. And the definition here, I'm sure you're curious, is 10 or fewer years of farm managing experience. So you have mid-career people coming into farming, and they're picked up in this statistic. So I thought you'd be interested to see that. We make a lot of loans to young beginning farmers, and we have a lot of investment we're doing in this and with this group of farmers. And the value of farm products increased pretty substantially in 2022 over 2017, over 37%. Unfortunately, USDA reported just last week that farm incomes nationwide are down 23% since the 2022 census. So the farmer community is struggling a little bit across the country. It's true in Maryland. Input costs are high, and farm incomes are down. Commodity prices are at a pretty low level right now. Next slide, please. Just a quick look at the land base here. I mentioned that there were over 12,000 farms, up a little bit from 2017. Land of farm in farms only dropped by about 12,000 acres, thankfully. I think we've gotten a little bit of a handle on the development of farmland. Still a concern, but that we're trending down with lower percentages with each census that is performed. The average farm size in Maryland is 58 acres. The price of farmland has gone up significantly by about $1,400 on average. You can see there the average acre for farmland, raw farmland, is $9,200. And then by farm size, this is a stat we look at pretty closely. Well over half of our farms are less than 50 acres in size. And we have programming that's targeted to these small farmers in particular. Next slide, please. Okay, legislation was passed last year that affects two of our programs. I just thought I would mention this. This Senate Bill 32 and House Bill 120 actually went through the Senate Finance Committee, made some changes to our Water of its microloan program to let us make microloans to watermen that only fish in the Potomac River and are licensed by the Potomac River Fisheries Commission. So they're now eligible to apply by the change in legislation. And the legislation also gives more flexibility in the size of the loans that we can make. Formerly, we're limited to making loans of no greater than 15,000 in size. Now our board of directors sets the limit, and we're making loans of up to $40,000. We were hearing from prospective borrowers that 15,000 wasn't nearly enough, especially if you needed to make an investment in a workboat. So we've made some adjustments there, and you can see there how many applications we've approved the last 2 years that we've had funding for this program. We're getting $500,000 a year since 2023, and we have one more year of mandated funding in 2026, and then we'll be done requesting funding for this program because a fair amount of the money that we loan out comes back to us through principal repayments. Next slide, please. And the other change Senate Bill 32 and House Bill 120 made last year was to our Oyster Shucking House Loan Fund program, which you all established and funded last year. You established the program in 2022, and you funded it in 2024 with $1 million one-time appropriation. So far, we've had one application that we approved for $20,000. A change that the legislation made last year allows us to make loans for operations that have seasonal full-time employees rather than just year-round full-time employees. The legislation requires us to lend no more than $25,000 for every full-time job created. And the bill last year allows us to make loans for operations that have seasonal full-time employees, which is more typical in an oyster shucking house operation that you're going to be working in the winter and not so much in the summer. Next slide, please. Blue catfish, major challenge facing the Chesapeake Bay today. The Department of Natural Resources and the Maryland Department of Ag are very much focused on eradicating this fish by harvesting it and eating it. And next slide, please. The blue catfish is actually a very good eating fish. It's not a bottom dweller. It feeds in the middle of the water column, and it preys on all kinds of species which we like to eat, including blue crabs and striped bass and other finfish species. And you can see here's the numbers of landings that have been seen over the years. MDA is working very hard on growing the market for restaurants and consumers to want to eat more blue catfish. And another problem with blue catfish is under federal law, all catfish processing must be done in USDA inspected facilities. It's a unique requirement. It was established by Congress to help protect the catfish farming industry in the southern part of the country from foreign imports. Our congressional delegation's been unable to get the law changed relative to this. This adds a significant expense to processing seafood, in this case, the blue catfish. Next slide, please. So we're doing everything we can to incentivize the processing of blue catfish. There are 4 companies that process blue catfish today in Maryland. We want to see them grow their capacity to process blue catfish, and also we want to see more blue catfish processors in Maryland. In fact, we're in conversations with a firm right now that wants to start a blue catfish processing operation. We have 3 programs that provide either loans or grants or both for activity around blue catfish processing. Next slide, please. So new this year, we were very fortunate to receive a $3.8 million grant from USDA to establish a revolving loan program for Maryland livestock processing, focused both on large animal slaughter, which has been a major problem and impediment since the pandemic for our livestock producers. And again, included in this category is the blue catfish. Right now, they're invasive species like the snakehead, which now is called the Chesapeake chana. So we have this new loan program. We matched it with some core funding of ours to. It was a very competitive national program. We were pleased and a little bit lucky to get the funding. $5 million total in the fund, and we can make larger loans of up to $2.5 million in this program. And we have 2 applications pending currently, both blue catfish related, I might offer. So, and we're also taking some of our livestock processing grant funds, which we'll talk about in a second, to go with the loans to really incentivize folks to want to make investments in blue catfish processing in particular. Next slide, please. And I mentioned the livestock processing grant program. You all have funded this for the last 3 years. We're going into our 3rd year, $400,000 this year. And again, I mentioned that big bottleneck that we're having at the meat processing facilities. We had 18 up until a month and a half ago. We lost one of our small livestock processors in Cecil County to a fire. We're not sure they're going to reopen. We hope they do, because we need all the capacity we can in Maryland. Some of our growers are going out of state and have as long as a year wait times to have their animals processed. So definitely a big problem. We're trying to incentivize our processors to expand their capacity. And we have matching grants for either USDA inspected facilities of up to $50,000, or there's other kinds of facilities that are not continuous inspected by USDA, but need certification from the health departments in USDA, and they can receive smaller grants. Next slide, please. Another thing we've been working on for 5 years now is helping MDA to promote its Certified Local Farm and now FISH program. It was a Certified Local Farm Enterprise program originally under the original legislation that passed in 2021. Legislation was passed 2 years ago to add invasive fish species to the program. And one of the aims of the program, in addition to supporting local Maryland food production, is to incentivize our state agencies and institutions to buy more local food. The wholesaler, the agencies that buy from wholesalers are always looking for the lowest price. And, very often our direct farm marketers are looking for a retail price. And they're small operations. Of course, the wholesalers need lots of supply to meet these institutional contract demands. And so the state has established a 20% local food purchasing goal from all state agencies and universities that buy food. And we're now up to 130 providers in a directory of certified producers that MDA maintains, including 127 certified farmers, and 3 of the 4 blue catfish processors are also listed in the directory. And you can see there in FY23, the state agencies and universities reported to MDA that they had made $522,000 in local food purchases out of the $71 million in food that was purchased from 94 vendors. So we have a ways to go with local food, and we have a grant program that you all established that supports this. Next slide, please. And that is the Maryland Certified Local Farm and Fish Aggregation Grant Program, which we've administered going now into our 5th year, with funding ending this year unless additional funding is provided. And the Maryland Food System Resiliency Council and the Maryland Ag Commission want you to extend that funding. They want basically you to double that funding for a specific purpose, and I'll talk about that in a second. But anyway, this program endeavors to make incentive grants to have small farmers aggregate their demand with other farmers so that they can sell more efficiently to institutions, wholesalers, and food banks. And to be a certified local farm enterprise, you must be in compliance with Maryland's nutrient management law. So you have to meet those stringent stewardship requirements the state of Maryland imposes on the farmers to be eligible to be in the directory and to be a certified farmer. And thankfully, the vast majority of our farmers in Maryland today are following their nutrient management plans. And so we had this grant program with $435,000 annually. Next slide, please. And the program heretofore has had a small scale farmer grant component and a large public sector for counties, regional councils, school systems, et cetera, grant component, where we're trying to have the aggregation, the pulling together of these smaller farm operations together so they can efficiently sell to wholesalers and institutions. And next slide, please. So we've had some decent success with the small farm aggregation grants. Here's the proprietor of Moon Valley Farm. Great story. Just was named the Young Farmer of the Year in Frederick County. 10 years ago, she had a baby, became interested in local food, was living in Baltimore County in suburbia, started a small operation on half an acre. She now runs a 25-acre organic farm in Frederick County, employs 25 people, and is just doing a heck of a great job, not only with her own fruit and vegetable production, but aggregating the demand of other farmers in her area. And she's now selling to not only the Frederick County school system, but the Montgomery County school system. Great success story. Next slide, please. And we've had, the Garrett County's Grower Cooperative make some real progress. We've been working with a cooperative effort out of the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. And so we've had some success, but we really, next slide, please. We really need to be focused on providing much more capacity to aggregate from more farms. And so the Food System Resiliency Council has been studying this and many other problems, not related to food production and aggregation, but also food distribution, which is outside of market bailiwick. But on the food production, processing, and aggregation side, that is in our mission space. And next slide, please. The council has just issued a report, and one of its recommendations is to continue funding for the food aggregation grant program for at least another year and actually double the funding to $1 million, but focus the funding towards the local government school system, regional council projects. Caroline County on the Eastern Shore has a tremendous program of sourcing local food and feeding both their school kids during the school year and then in the summer as well. They've been working with the regional council there to try to figure out a way to grow that enterprise. Montgomery County's been working on this for years, as has Frederick County, trying to figure out how to really scale up the aggregation of local food into both institutional markets as well as just more generally bring more farm income to our farmers. So that's the recommendation coming from the council. Next slide, please. Also new this year is a large animal veterinary loan program that we just launched a month or so ago. Huge problem. We don't have enough veterinarians to serve our cattle, our pigs, sheep, horses. And this is a nationwide problem. Some other states have tackled this problem with actually grants to pay off student loans. Many of our veterinarians have student loan debt of in excess of $300,000, just like, medical doctors. And well, we don't have money for a grant program. We do have funds for a loan program. So we're trying to incentivize large animal vets to come to Maryland, stay in Maryland. And we're hoping this, moves the needle in that regard. It's much more lucrative to be in a small animal veterinary practice, serving cats and dogs. And we really do need more large animal vets in the state. Next slide, please. You've heard me talk in the past about the loss of that paper mill in Western Maryland and challenges facing our wood products, both the forest landowners as well as the folks in the harvesting and processing business. So we've had this, we affectionately call it the WIPI grant program now, it's going into the third year. You can see there we've funded 24 projects, totaling just under $1 million over the last 2 years. DNR is actually very supportive of this, very much wants to assist with new market development as well. And last year they chipped in a little money to augment what we were doing. Last year, next slide, please. And I just very briefly wanted to update you on our next generation farmland acquisition and small acreage next gen program. You all have funded this, I think, pretty well. We have funding for this program for at least the next 3 years. And this is a unique program. We help a beginning farmer buy their first farm in exchange for temporarily or permanently extinguishing the development rights. So it's a two-for program. We're getting that young farmer on the land that they wouldn't otherwise have access to, and we're preserving that land for future generations as a result. And you can see here how we've done since we started the program in 2018. Next slide, please. So how are we doing overall? To date, we've made just under 500 loans, totaling $84 million, leveraging just under $230 million in commercial lender leverage, helped well over 300 young beginning farmers. We're doing it really at the speed of business. We turn around loan requests pretty quickly. We pretty much guarantee 3 weeks or less for an approval, and we can get to the loan settlement table in 5 or 6 weeks typically. So we really are committed to serving the people that have projects that are very time sensitive and need to close. We've also made a number of grants, and you'll see another slide that sort of details that, but $10 million in total, but $4 million of that was pandemic era funding from the federal government. And we've helped about 400 young beginning farmers with incentive grants. And I mentioned the next gen beginner farmers, 48 projects since we started. Next slide, please. And here's just another way to look at how we've done over the last several years. Just under 109 million all in, 1,365 projects. Next slide, please. And here's another way to look at it, regionally. No surprise, the Eastern Shore sort of leads in loans, but the Western Shore regions really get their fair share of the grants. So that's an interesting way to see how we're doing. Next slide, please. And just to comment on our loan portfolio, remember we have core loans where we take collateral security. We also have a number of programs that have been specially funded from what you would think of as special fund sources for targeted purposes, where we typically don't take collateral, and sometimes we provide a grant at the end of the loan period for good loan repayment performance. But you can see here overall how we're doing. We're doing pretty well. Our loan losses have been right around 1.3%, which is terrific for a small business economic development finance organization. And we think we're doing the job. Next slide. And just to comment on demographics, I know the committee's very interested in this. I mentioned at the beginning that about 38% of Maryland farm producers are women, and 30% of our projects have gone to women. So remember, a 30% principal farm operator from the last census. We're right on target now that we're looking at all farmers. So we're continuing to make progress in that area. And then active duty military, 9% of Maryland farmers have served in the military and are veterans. And exactly 9% of the projects we funded, where we're getting the reported demographic survey forms back from the applicants, are getting more big funds. So we're right on target there. We actually have an interest rate reduction for former military. Next slide, please. Or current military too, for that matter. Next slide, please. And here's another way to look at the demographic data is by race. And you can see there that in 2022, the number of minority farmers overall went up a percent, a tick from 3.6% to 3.7%. And I'm very pleased to say that Morbidco is doing a pretty good job in supporting our minority farmers. 12.1% of the projects we funded have actually gone to minority farmers. So we think we're doing a pretty good job there. And there's always more to do, and we try to keep those folks in mind when we're developing programs to make sure we're reaching them, including today, of course, urban farmers as well. Next slide, please. So finally, final slide. I just wanted to give you a preview of what I hope you see in next year's budget. Obviously, we're talking with the Department of Budget Management now about our submission for next year. But this year we received 4.1 million. Next year we're asking for 2.4 million. So 42% reduction. We want to continue to fund the Waterman's microloan program for its final year. The WIPI program we think is worthy of investment, as well as the livestock processing grant program. And then I mentioned the local farm and fish food aggregation grant program that the Food System Resiliency Council wants to see continued with a little more money targeted at supporting those larger projects being started by county governments or regional council. So I think that's my last slide. There's probably a closing slide. I'll be happy to take any questions. Appreciate your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. McHenry, and very comprehensive presentation. A lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of numbers. And I'll open up any questions. Members have any questions?
I have a quick question, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I was just curious about the fact that you mentioned you were going to be self-sufficient after one more cash infusion from the budget of around $2.5 million. Any chance you don't need that money?
Well, we've run models, and we do think we need to retain all of the appropriation you provided for fiscal 2025.
Okay.
But that puts us in good stead. I think we're going to be able to do $6 to $7 million in core loans every year going forward for a long time. So that's what that General Assembly asked us to do, almost 20 years ago.
Right.
We're on track to do that. So.
Okay. I mean, that's good to know. I'm glad you're going to be self-sufficient. Thank you for answering.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any additional questions from members? If not, I have one quick question. Are you doing any investments in new, say, high intensity, like greenhouse farming, like all these warehouse spaces we have, like empty spaces, let's say Baltimore City? Have you worked with any of those companies? I know that's a growing industry in some countries and regions.
Yeah. We just were on a call yesterday for a large project that that I really can't talk about in the northeastern part of the state. Hopefully I will be able to talk about it once it's approved. But yes, no, we funded, for example, an indoor mushroom growing operation in Bladensburg about a year ago. So
You said Bladensburg?
Bladensburg, yeah.
Georgia's, okay.
Yeah. So definitely eligible. Any kind of food production, indoors, outdoors, all eligible for financing from our PITCO.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, appreciate you being here, and of course you'll let your share your presentation, and we can distribute that to everyone.
Thanks again. Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Okay, up next we have TEDCO, Maryland Technology Development Corporation. Mr. Miles Stovall, Chief Executive Officer. It's all yours.
Okay, all good, all good. Thank you, sir. Senator Ellis, Delegate Watson, members of the Joint Committee, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to tell the story of TEDCO. You got our deck. We got what's about 40 some pages. I plan on going through every single one of them. No joke. We're not gonna go through all. I'm gonna walk through maybe about 6 or 7 of them. I think they tell the story. But before I do that, and you can go ahead and bring up the document. You can go ahead straight to page 7, if you don't mind. But before I get to that, I want to make 2 announcements, if I may. And Senator Ellis, some of this will be a repeat of what you heard, so my apologies for the repetition. But sometimes, repetition is good. No, that's not page 7. Keep going. That's 7. Just hold it there for just a second. So 2 announcements, if I may. First, we'll be getting announcements out if you don't already have it on your calendars. But December the 4th of this year, we will be bringing back our expo. We haven't had it since 2019. Expo, the Entrepreneur Expo, is the largest gathering of the ecosystem around entrepreneurship and innovation here in the state. We'll be doing it at the Renaissance Hotel there in Baltimore Harbor Place. Going to have a lot of great events, everything from a kind of a fair to showcase the different entities that we have in the state, as well as the companies, as well as a number of informative sessions. And we're reaching out to a number of you to participate in some of our efforts. And so if you can put that on your calendar, you'll get a formal invite. Mindy will make sure we get the right information to all of you. The other announcement, some of you may have heard last Monday, a little over a week ago, and along with the governor, Senator Van Hollen, Congressman Hoyer, as well as representatives from the U.S. Treasury, we were able to announce a $10 million award from U.S. Treasury. This award is going to allow us to do a lot of what you're going to hear me talk about here over the next few minutes, which is how do we really start to scale and give our entrepreneurs not just access to the financial resources, but all the other resources that need everything from how do they think about financial literacy? How do we help our women? How do we help them with their back office scaling? How do we help them think about getting to that next level of revenue recognition or valuation accretion? So how do we help them become these scale companies? And 2 parts as I close on this part of it that's really exciting for us here at TEDCO. Number one, as you all know, I think most of you know, we're with your venture capital arm and support for early stage technology and life science. But this particular award, this Bridge Award, expands us into all small businesses, whether they're tech-based or not. The other thing it does, and it is part of our strategy, and I've talked to some of you about this, as well as the governor's office, it also helps us to start to see how do we start to think regionally. And I know the governor talks a lot about regionalism. And so one of the acronyms you heard us talk about last week was this notion of D squared MV, because these funds are going to have us supporting resources in Delaware, the District of Columbia, obviously Maryland, and then Virginia. We're going to be working with, for instance, George Mason in Virginia, Howard University in the district, University of Maryland College Park, and then some folks in Delaware. And so we're really excited about this. This really is an extension of what we think and thinking more regionally that we've been trying to do. So with that, let me get into this. So again, my name is Troy Lamel Stovall. I'm the CEO of TEDCO. I should have been here and just celebrated my 4-year anniversary here at TEDCO. And we're really excited about the support you've provided to us over the years. We just had our retreat about a month ago with our board up in Towson, and we showed a chart that showed what we were the day I started and what we are today. And what you see is a doubling of revenues, almost a significant increase in our what's called assets under management, which is an investment term, the staff itself. And a lot of that all that growth is because of your support of TechCo and the work that we do. And that support has led to this slide. And that $2.7 billion economic impact you number see in the middle, that's a number that we've worked with the University of Baltimore to help us calculate. We actually know, working with them, that number is understated. There are parts of TechCo that are a little trickier in terms of trying to figure out the economic impact of them. We think the number is close to $3 billion of impact. You also see the impact of the follow-on investments that we've had in the state. So your support of TechCo over these 26 years has led to this type of output for the state, and we couldn't be more excited about it. So if you could go to slide 9 for me, please. If anybody ever asks you how to explain TechCo, pull out this slide. This is the slide that explains TechCo. Because on this slide, you get to see all the things as we're working from our universities, our federal labs, through moving them from translational research, translating that research into commercialization efforts, working with the federal labs, doing the same thing, supporting our efforts in the rural and urban areas, providing them some early stage funding, and then to our investment products, and undergirding that with venture development and marketing and storytelling. So I'll get to all that. So really, trying to do in the left to right, a Maryland Innovation Initiative, or MII, works with our 5 research institutions in that tech transfer, translating that research from the labs into commercializations. And by the way, the rest of the deck goes into far more detail into each of these. It shows you logos of some of the companies that each of these entities have invested in, success, and the types of dollars we're talking about for each of these areas. And so, for instance, for stem cell, they've had over $200 million awarded, and they've had a significant. I'm sorry, that's stem cell. They've had over $50 million. $50 million they've invested. Excuse me, I got them mixed up. Stem cell's done over $200 million. Stem cell, they actually invest in research that does help with using stem cell to help with a range of diseases. And many of you may have remembered last year at our hearing, there was a little boy that was 8 years old, should be 9 by now, and he was born with a bubble disease, where he couldn't, he had an limited infection, inability to fight off infections. Well, he's now 8 years old. He was running around the hearing rooms with his little bow tie on, directly because of the investments that you made for us in stem cell research, with work that we did with Johns Hopkins, allowed him to no longer be in that bubble. So stem cells are a very exciting part of the work that we do in TechCo. But again, it's about how do we take what's happening in our labs and bring it to commercialization. Same thing with our work in our federal programs. That's really 2 parts. One is how do we do a better job of moving what's happening in our federal labs and bring it to the market. We just also were able to celebrate again with our congressional delegation about 2 months ago a $1.1 million earmark that was provided to us in order to we're going to be working with 1 or 2 federal labs to help accelerate those transfers and kind of act as a pilot. And I think what you're going to hear is one of the themes you're going to hear from me is we're taking the funds that you have provided to us and leveraging those with federal funds, where we created an effort. We're going after not just federal funds very aggressively. We're going after other corporate funds. We're also going after philanthropic funds. We haven't nailed those other 2 as much lately as of yet, but I'm hoping to next year, when I speak to you again next year, that I'll be able to tell you how we'll be able to tap into, again, using your funds as seed and stabilization funds to go after additional funds to leverage this. As we move up the scale, that RBII and UBII stands for Rural Business Innovation Initiative and the Urban Business Innovation Initiative. So what we've done is put the state into 4 areas. In our rural areas, we have an individual in each of those rural areas of the state. So that's in Western Maryland and Southern Maryland, the Shore and Upper Shore. And we've also looked at, we have individuals in Prince George's County and in Baltimore City. And the point of both of those efforts is each of those areas geographically have resources that support entrepreneurship, whether it's the universities or the community colleges, whether it's economic development agencies or other local-based agencies. And our job is, because a lot of these entrepreneurs actually, frankly, don't know these resources exist. And so our job is to bring more visibility. And that's the exact thing we're trying to do with the $10 million bridge is you'll hear me talk about this notion of stitching and scaling. How do we bring these things together? The state of Maryland has all the right set of resources. They just frankly aren't visible. And you'll also hear me talk about most entrepreneurs, senators and delegates lack 3 things. They lack time, they lack talent, and they lack access to treasure, right? And so part of what we have to do at TechCo, and we are doing at TechCo, is giving them back a minute or even 2 minutes. We're giving them access to a deeper base of talent. That's a lot of what we're going to do with the Bridge program. And also, where's the X mark the spot? Not just in terms of resources, financial resources, but they need wet labs. They need lawyers. They need talent. They need access to IP. They need space. And so that's all the things that we're doing through our teams at RBI and UBI. We also provide seed funding for those rural areas, up to about $25,000. I'll sit here and tell you we're going to be launching again at the Expo in December. We're going to be launching what we're calling a concept capital effort. We recognize that so many individuals, particularly people of color, women in our rural areas, don't have the $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 to start their business, their tech-based business. We're going to be providing that level of funding here in the short order, and we'll be making those announcements at Expo. And then lastly, well, not lastly, but then you have our investment funds, our pre-seed social impact fund. We recognize that there are going to be great tech-based companies that may never be a candidate for traditional institutional capital. Well, but they're going to be a nice $6, $7, $8, $10 million business that could pay us back a return. And given that we're providing those funds and we're using that through the SSBCI funds, again, another source of funding from the feds. If you all remember, several years ago, the state received $200 million of SSBCI funds. TECO received 50 of that 200 million, and TECO is one of the fastest deployer of SSBCI capital in the country, allowing Maryland to be the number 3 deployer of SSBCI capital in the country. And so, and because of that, we are anticipating some additional funding because of our ability to put that capital. But we don't only just write checks, we also support those entrepreneurs. And so we actually give them a loan executive to support their efforts. As you move up the scale, and so the pre-seed social impact funds, ladies and gentlemen, are for those entities, back of the envelope idea, not really a lot there. So we help them move along that hockey stick, you see, that gold line, to make their way up to seed funds. And by the way, in social impact, we're writing checks from about $100,000 and $150,000 up to about $300,000 to $400,000. At the seed funds, that's when you have a product, or if you're life science, you're going through your clinical test. You've made some progress with your clinical test, and you may have to have some revenue coming in, but maybe not a lot. And so you qualify for our seed funds. We have 5 different seed funds that you've provided us funding for. And then as you begin to scale up or you get further along in your clinical trials, you qualify for our venture funds. And one of the things we do with our seed and venture funds, we have what are called syndicates. In other words, we put together other investors, many of them from outside the state, which is one of the key goals for TECO is to bring capital outside the state to look at our great opportunities here. And so we're putting together syndicates that particularly that venture fund stage. And undergirding all of this, to close out this slide, you have this venture development. Their job is to work with those entrepreneurs when they aren't quite ready. If they're not investment ready, how do we get them investment ready? And then once we've invested in them, how do we make sure that they're scaling and growing and and they're really being asked 2 questions. How do we accelerate that scaling, both on revenue and on investment? And we believe if a portion of our portfolio is growing and scaling faster than the national average in certain sectors, that will create a light on Maryland and allow investors to ask the question, what the heck is going on in Maryland? And again, that's all connected with what we're doing with Bridge as well. And at the end of the day, we've got to be able to tell a story. And our marketing team does an outstanding job of telling these stories of these we've got over 200 portfolio companies. We put them on our social media. We put them in traditional media. We do articles about them. We put them in speaking engagements. We elevate their visibility and their company's visibility to accelerate their path to greatness. So, and now that's TECO. That's a lot of what we do. What I want to quickly jump down to the end of the deck. And again, if you could jump to go down to page 34. I'm going to talk to you about several new initiatives that you provided for us. There's one right before, but I don't need to slide for it. You've given us monies for what's called the maker spaces. So across the state, there are these spaces that's just like they're maker spaces. And we've been working with a group called OpenWorks out of Baltimore. And these maker spaces are what they sound like. They were a place where you can go make stuff. And through your funding for the next 3 years, if I got it right, we got $1 million per year. We've done it now for two cycles. We'll do for the next 3 years, $1 million a year to help scale up those maker spaces. So thank you for that. On this slide, you have our Women Entrepreneur Excellence. This is a great opportunity that we're doing in collaboration with our 4 HBCUs. This is focused on any woman entrepreneur in the state of Maryland, Black or white, Hispanic, rural or urban, any women entrepreneur. We've had a number of cohorts already. We've had over almost 100 women go through our cohorts, giving us great impact. And we've been able to really change trajectory for a number of these women entrepreneurs in their journeys. And so we're really excited. By the way, many of you know Linda Singh, who was my predecessor here. Linda is leading this effort for us. You can go to the next slide. If you remember this time last year, we were talking to you about the Equitech Growth Fund. You were able to fund it, obviously not the numbers we wanted, but still appreciate the funding that was provided. But I think we told you part of what we were trying to do is Equitech was just one of the tools in a larger set of tools that we think we have to have in order to create a higher level of growth. And I know the governor talks about this in terms of tech-based economic development. And so the umbrella is Cultivate. Cultivate is all the tools that we have. One of those tools being the Equitech Growth Fund that you provided to us. The other one is this one I just told you about, the $10 million bridge program. There's ones in commerce. Commerce is the manufacturing, the 4.0 that they have, as well as the build to scale. So all those are tools under this Cultivate. So we don't pretend that all these tools need to exist under TEDCO. They do not and should not. But it's important for you all and all of us to be able to see all those tools, back to my visibility point. And so we're thinking about them holistically under this Cultivate umbrella. Specifically for Equitech, again, we have a commission. You've given us $3 million for last year, $5 million going forward through 2033. And we're focused on, because I talk in alliterations, as some of you have heard me do, this says workforce and infrastructure. I would call that the people and the places. We got to invest in the people, and they got to have a place to go to do their stuff in. And so a lot of what we're working with this commission on is how do we invest in those people, and how do we invest in the places they need to go and do what they do to be creative. Next slide, please. The other program you had us start was Cyber Maryland. Cyber Maryland is our effort, again, it's actually around workforce as well, is to look at how do we answer the question of, we've got, and this again, Senator Hester has been a huge champion, I think as many of you know around this. How do we begin to answer the question of how do we fill these 30,000 jobs that come up every year? And we've done a lot of great analytics around this. Anything you want to see around this, Mindy can send you some of the reports that we've done on this with the group that we have. And basically it's telling us that we are producing the talent. The talent just isn't staying in the state. And I know that you've probably heard that before. And the other challenge as we think about this is, I think too many times when people hear about cyber, they want to strictly focus on the NSA related jobs. And so what we're thinking about is much more than that. This is about those types of jobs, obviously. It's about corporate jobs. It's about, you Senator Ellis in Southern Maryland, you need that, that bakery, that cleaning. They need good cyber talent. How do we make sure that they have great cyber talent, accessible and great and affordable for them? And also what we do at TEDCO, how do we make sure that our entrepreneurs have great access to cyber talent? So this is looking holistically at both the supply side of this. In other words, how are we working with our community colleges, our four-year institutions and other training providers, but also on the demand side, how do we look at job skills and how people are thinking about, are degrees really required, and asking different questions and beginning to get our arms around this. And I'm really excited about where the conversation has been going with Cyber Maryland. So again, thank you for support. And I think the last one I'll talk about, one of our new programs is Human Relevant. You can go to the next slide, the last slide. Is Human Relevant. I'm sorry, I got one more after that. Human Relevant Testing. This is an outgrowth of, this is really positioning Maryland to be at the forefront of, and this is, I think sometimes people, and even I'll admit, I had a different view of what this could be about, but this is really trying to move us to a different way to think about how do we do clinical testing, where, traditionally it's obviously done through animals, but when you start mirroring the work that we're doing here in Maryland with quantum and AI, the ability to do some of the things that you normally would have to do through animals can be rethought. And so this is funding through the Department of Health and through fees that collected via the Department of Health that allows us to stimulate and build upon that. And this will be, I think, one of the first in the nation's ways to start to think differently about how do we think about research testing. And so as I close, and I've mentioned this a couple of times already, is this SSBCI dollars. And again, I will close on this one. SSBCI. is that this is how we've allocated those funds. The 50 million that came to TEDCO were funds that, as I mentioned, we've used those in 3 ways. We've created a social impact fund. We put some additional funds into our venture and our seed funds, and we've invested at this point too. We'll become 2 more funds. You know, one of the stats I talk about, senators and delegates, is in the venture capital world, less than 2% of venture capital dollars across the United States went to an entity started by someone of color or a woman from a rural area. TEDCO, in last fiscal year, we had over 50% of our investments, which was about 80 investments, went to someone of color, entity started by someone of color, a woman from a rural area. 50%, more, actually almost 60%. That's both in dollars and in the funds. And so, but the other challenge is less than 1% of venture funds are managed by someone of color, women. And so we're trying to bridge that gap too. So we put money into what we call our VCLP program. We invested in 2 entities that are managed by, one is by a Black woman, and the other is by a Black man and a white gentleman. And so that was it. The last slide is about the EDA Tech Hub. Again, you've provided us some great funding for that through a various number of programs, through the Baltimore Innovation Initiative. You've also through the PAVA program, the funding directly to Upsurge, as well as the direct support of the Tech Hub to GBC. So we're very appreciative of that, even though I know people are not a little disappointed that we didn't get the phase 2 funding. Your support is still allowing us to galvanize and bring together that group there in Baltimore. And we're very excited about that. And we're very much a part of that work that's happening in Baltimore and the Baltimore MSA. So with that, Chair, Senator Ellis and Delegate Watson, I will conclude and obviously open myself up to any questions.
Thank you very much, Troy. Appreciate that presentation. And it's always good to hear it 2 times. Looking forward to the 3rd time to hear your presentation again. The Finance Committee visit to the TEDCO headquarters a few weeks ago. So definitely appreciate it because you're doing quite a bit. So members, any questions for TEDCO Executive Director? Okay, and again, see no questions, if you could or share your presentation.
Yep.
With us, and
absolutely. I appreciate it. Again, I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Yeah, you're quite welcome.
Well. Bye now.
Okay. So moving on to our 3rd presentation from Maryland Department of Commerce. I was told that Secretary Anderson would not be here. So I'm not sure if either Mr. Fish or Ms. Lahat will give a presentation.
Yes, thank you, Chair Ellis and Chair Watson. We're prepared to go forward. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Okay, well,
and members of the Joint Committee as well.
Okay, thank you for stepping in. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. So my name, good afternoon, is Andy Fish. I'm the Senior Director of the Office of Finance Programs here at the Maryland Department of Commerce. And I'm joined this afternoon by Jennifer Lahat, who is the Managing Director of our Office of Policy Research and Government Affairs. And on behalf of Secretary Anderson, we want to thank you for your support and for this opportunity to speak with you today about an update on several of Commerce's business programs. And also want to thank Elizabeth for getting us organized and teed up with the presentation today. So as we move on here, what we'll be discussing are some of the most important tools in the Commerce Economic Development Toolbox, which help the department attract new business and their investment to the state, retain businesses in Maryland and keep them from leaving the state, and also support existing businesses as they expand and create new jobs. Our programs are diverse and targeted to meet the different needs of a wide range of businesses of all sizes, from startups to established legacy companies that have become Maryland institutions. The programs that we'll be focusing on today, and they're listed on page 3 under the agenda, are the Port of Baltimore Emergency Business Assistance Program, the Maryland New Start Microloan Program, the Build Our Future Grant Pilot Program, the Cannabis Business Assistance Fund, the Child Care Capital Support Revolving Loan Fund, the Maryland Small Business Development Finance Authority, or MSBDFA, the Small Minority and Women-Owned Business Account Video Lottery Terminal Fund, which is sometimes called VLT or SWMOVA, and then lastly but not leastly, Advantage Maryland, which is also known as MEDAF, or the Maryland Economic Development Authority and Assistance Fund. So with that, we can just move over to page 5, and we'll jump right into things if we could, please. So the Baltimore Emergency Business Assistance Program was established by the governor and the General Assembly shortly after the collapse of the Key Bridge, and it provides grants to support temporary financial relief to the businesses impacted by the disruption of the operations to the Port of Baltimore and the access to the channel on its way to and from the ports. To set up and operate the program, Commerce re-diverted a third of the staff from the Office of Finance Programs, as well as devoted staff from the Office of Policy Research and Government Affairs, our marketing and communications teams, and IT to devote the resources to this important endeavor here. To qualify, a business had to have at least 2 W-2 employees, but no more than 500 employees in Maryland. And to date, the program has awarded $10 million to 126 recipients. The funds to provide the assistance were sourced by the existing Commerce Fund balances, both at the MIDFA and the MEDAF programs. And the department is in the process of wrapping up the back-end accounting of the program right now as well. So there's a tail end of the activities that are going on as we're finalizing the record keeping and handle the very small handful of remaining applications to be funded and decision those. So that is our program to help with the port assistance there. And all that was coordinated in conjunction with DHCD and also the Department of Labor, so that the programs did not overlap, but designed to provide a support for different organizations that met the qualifications of each. So thank you. And with that, if we move to the next slide. Thank you. The Maryland New Start Microloan Program was a new program set up this fiscal year, and the purpose is to provide no interest loans to incarcerated individuals as they leave prison for the purpose of starting up a small business. The loans would be up to $50,000, have no interest rates attached to them, and also no collateral, and also no reliance on a credit score for these individuals who have gone through and taken some entrepreneurship training through a vendor selected by the Department of Labor. And the program was established July 1st when the funding first became available. And so far, we've had one application that looks very promising that we're working with right now. So that's our newest program. Now, if we move to the next page 7, please. Also a new program, the Build Our Future Grant Pilot Program, was established in 2023 through the Governor's Innovation Economy Infrastructure Act. And its purpose is to really award funds to forward-thinking technologies. And if you think about smart technologies across industries that will really drive the future with regard to efficiency, energy, waste, and other areas. The sectors are listed on the slide here. And in fiscal 24, through a competitive process, 11 recipients received funding, or awards, I should say, totaling $9 million. And they each are required to provide a certain amount of matching funds based on the grant amount. So it's a shared partnership in that regard, if you will. And the second round of funding for this was just announced on August of last month, the 26th, with funding of $7 million for this upcoming round. And there was a press release issued on June 25th with the awardees from that first round. That's very promising, and we're looking forward to seeing the applications that come in for this subsequent round. This program runs through 4 years and presently would conclude through June of 2027. Then if we move to the next page, we're moving on to the Cannabis Business Assistance Fund. And this fund was established with cannabis reform and initially funded with total appropriations of $80 million. And it's in place to provide grants and loans to small businesses, including small minority and women-owned businesses entering the adult use cannabis industry, and also providing grants to the HBCUs for related programs to help these entrepreneurs get a business up and running with regard to operating a cannabis business, whether it be a dispensary, a processor, or a grower there. Our activity today started with medical conversion fee assistance back in the summer of 2023, where you can see here that the 14 entities participated in that and the amount they received. That was followed up shortly in the fall of last year by the HB2 businesses. There are 9 entities there that qualified pursuant to the MCA qualifications and awarded a total of about $45.5 million. And then right now, we've got pending on review a number of applications, 91 in fact, for social equity license application assistance. And each of these different, I'll call them components within the overall program, are guided by the statute in terms of the establishment and what they're designed to do and support along the rollout there. What you'll see coming in the future is a next round that would further support the social equity conditional licensees with funding that would help their business become operational. And that's something we're in very close discussion with the MCA, the Office of Social Equity Administration, on to make sure that we provide something that's meaningful to all the parties, and also that is consistent with what was envisioned by the leaders of the General Assembly with that. And that would be announced on our website, hopefully, later in this fall as that begins to be developed. Next, we move on to the Child Care Capital Support Revolving Loan Fund. And this year, this fund will be entering its 3rd program year, which is really exciting in that regard. And it was purposed when established was to assist with the improvement and particularly the expansion of child care facility resources coming out of the pandemic, recognizing that was a roadblock for many working parents looking to get back into the workforce after the pandemic or remain in the workforce in that regard. And the award priority is based on the low-income populations of certain areas, and those areas are determined by MSDE, so that's what Commerce relies on in determining the priorities. And the loan funds are just used for capital expenses, like could be equipment, could be carpeting, things like that, could be walls, bricks and sticks. In contrast, it's not used for operating funds like salary or payroll or utilities, things of those expense nature. To date, it's been a very vibrant program with 76 businesses receive funding in 2023. And we're just wrapping up 2024 fiscal year with 50 businesses receiving about $9.5 million in funding. This fall, we'll announce the round 3, and we're trying to pay particular attention to the businesses that can operate new slots. And it's challenging because under the MSDE regulations, you've got a family child care home-based business, which can only provide up to 8 children in their slots, and only 2 of those can be under 2 years old. And then they move on to a large family child care home center or operation that's between 9 and 12 children. Then from there, you grow to the large child care centers, which could have a much larger number. In fact, there's not a maximum on that, but there are different staffing and safety requirements on that. So we're looking at those and navigating the best we can to really guide and support those, or we're looking to expand the slots where they're most needed in that regard. And with the data that we have from the last 2 years, we're really looking how that can help guide us in doing that. So that's the Child Care Capital Support Revolving Loan Fund. And then if we move on to the next page, page 10, we hit a longstanding program, the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority, also known as MSBDFA. And I know later this afternoon, we're gonna have a great presentation by our contract colleagues, Meridian Management Group, who operates the program on behalf of Commerce. This program, was established in 1978 and has been through some different iterations to broaden its inclusivity in that regard. And as we move over to the next page 11, the capabilities within this program are delivered through 4 key components. One is to support a small business that has a state contract or a county contract or federal contract to get going with its working capital. And then in the longer term loan assistance category is the equity participation program, where can help that aspiring entrepreneur to invest in a franchise or other kind of business. And those are usually typical longer term patient capital types of loans to help them develop longer lasting businesses there in that regard. We have the Guarantee Fund program capability there, which is designed to really encourage the banks to step up and provide a loan where maybe they wouldn't otherwise. So with the guarantee providing a little more comfort to their credit committee, will help them get more comfortable with that. And then lastly is the surety bonding program, which provides both bid and performance surety bonds. And you'll oftentimes see a surety bond work glove in hand with a contract finance program capability here. Recent activity in BizFA is shown on the next page of page 12, where we look at a summary of activity since 2020. And the pandemic greatly increased and skewed the volumes here in 2021 here. And I will note that outside of the pandemic activity, it's more representative levels when you look at the 2022 and 23 as businesses begin to recover and going after the pandemic in terms of what we're looking at going forward there with 22, 3, and 24. And then over on page 13, if we move next, please, you'll see that each county, since the program was started, back in, this goes back to 2020, each county across the state, including Baltimore City, has had, Ms. BIFA supported activity, very encouraging there, and not surprising as in prior years, big concentrations in Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and also Baltimore City. This just reflects the per capita, so no real surprises there from our perspective. Over on page 14 then, the demographic information is always a challenge for Commerce because we can't legally require an applicant to provide it. We do encourage them to do that, but we cannot do that legally. In this case here, with the 74 demographic forms that were provided over the time period here, that represents 37% of the applications over the 200 settled. So at least, is a percentage participation. It's where it is. And we're always encouraging to do more there and working on maybe if we look at asking the question a little differently, maybe it might encourage more participation there. And then in terms of the outcomes on Ms. BIFA, as we move please to page 15, this is a messy slide, and I apologize for the very last point there. The 64 transactions represented there with the balances of 7.1 million. That includes the pandemic figures that I mentioned were skewed back on a prior slide. So we're working on peeling out the pandemic figures to give some more accuracy there. But across the board, about 94, 95% of the loans perform mostly as you expect them. Occasionally, you might need a little modification to a payment structure or a little more patience there. And Commerce works very closely with those borrowers as well as with Marine Management Group to help them, get where they need to be given the different challenges the businesses might confront. And then, as in prior years, about 7% over the last year graduated to an improved credit status. And what that means is they could either go to a credit union or a bank and not have to rely on support from the state program to get credit on reasonable terms, or they found a place where they're able to grow and their cash balances were sufficient where they did not need to rely on the program. And then if we move to the next page, please, we move over to another of our small business workforce programs. And that's the Small Minority Women-Owned Business Account, or sometimes you hear this referred to as the VLT program, because the funding for this comes from the video lottery slots. And these funds are distributed by non-fund managers across the state. And we just added one fund manager last year in Montgomery County. And the neat thing about that addition was they brought in a great channel to the Hispanic community there that otherwise may have been a little more underserved. So it's good to see that inclusion going on as well. Moving over to the next page, just a brief reminder with the SWMOBA program, the fund managers do all the application intake, review, underwriting, the loan servicing, the modifications, they do the workouts. So Commerce provides a platform in terms of the funding and some other reporting aspects, but rely on the fund managers to do a lot of the heavy duty lifting there. And in return, they're able to retain the interest income and the fees they charge on the loans that they agree to with the borrowers there. This has been a very active program since it was started and through 2024. You'll see over 1,300 loans were approved for almost $155 million. So that's been a very, very active program in that regard. If we look on page 18, you'll see the 9 fund managers that I referred to earlier, and noteworthy here, you'll see Marine Management Group is a fund manager for SWMOBA as well as for Ms. BITFA. And each of the other fund managers that has other programs they typically operate as well, but they're all great partners, and we've got great rapport with each of them. And they're actively talking among each other. If they have a question about one deal they might not really understand real well, they'll reach out and talk to another one to find out how to best serve that customer. Then we graduate to or move on to our MEDAF or Advantage Maryland program. After we get off the recent recipients here, and these are some examples, some of the borrowers under the Ms. BITFA program on the left. If we go back one page, thanks, Elizabeth. And then some of the SWMOBA borrowers here on the right-hand side. And those are all companies from different areas of the state across the board there. And each of these businesses received funding last fiscal year. Thanks for that. Then moving over to Advantage Maryland or MEDAF, this program was created in 1999. And you'll see the 5 capabilities there. I would note that both the regional or local revolving loan funds have really slid over. Capability was over to VLT and Ms. BITFA, if you will. And then the special purpose grants and loans for daycare are really being met by the daycare revolving loan program or childcare. So even though those capabilities exist within MEDAF, we really rely on it today as a state for helping the local jurisdictions with the large economic development projects that create a lot of private capital investment coming in, as well as jobs, and also maybe related infrastructure where that might be needed as well to support that large economic development project. So there's a lot of interaction here going on with the Commerce regional reps and also each of the county and Baltimore City local economic development officers in the coordination here of these projects. And if we move over to one slide, nextly, each of these projects would need to be in what we call an eligible industry sector. And these industries are reviewed annually by Commerce and the Department of Labor to make sure they still fit, if you will. That is, they still fit with the strategic desires of the administration and the state in terms of their Maryland Economic Development Commission, and they're updated accordingly as a result of that. And they're really designed, when you look at the whole ecosystem, after you get to the large opportunities that MEDAF addresses, to the smaller parts of the ecosystem, recognize they're each important, combined, it really helps round out Maryland and improving its vibrancy in time. You'll see the program activity over on the next page since 2020. And these deals are typically very chunky. It's typically 18 months to 24 months from the time a proposal letter is issued to when it's actually funded. So that's why these numbers look kind of chunky, if you will. You'll see double-digit numbers in 2021 and 22. And we would expect that might start to occur again in fiscal year 25, just on the way things are in the pipeline there. But then if we look across how the fund is utilized across the county, again, you'll see the per capita population come into place here in terms of where the concentrations are. But over the time period, there's activity in every county, as you would hope to see. Then I mentioned earlier on how difficult it is to collect the demographic information, and that really comes to place here in terms of the few companies that complete that information for MEDAF. And something we're always to encourage, but continually we would like to receive more of that completed questionnaires to be able to provide that to you. Then lastly, we kind of round out on the next slide with the MEDAF economic development impact overall. And if you look at it as a portfolio since the year 2000, the very bottom line has been very, very consistent in terms of return on the MEDAF incentive, or each state dollar of incentive put in. It's over $28 for each dollar that the state has put in, has been the return of $20 or more back to the state. and the local jurisdictions. And that's a key metric that we look at while there's flexibility, in determining different things that go into each transaction. Overall, we want to continue to maintain that strong trend there. Then we kind of round that out with just the next slide of some recent pictures that took place and some examples here. I mentioned work on infrastructure. The Wharton Rail Safety Project was over in Kent County, and that was a real exciting project. The county and MDOT in particular were able to qualify for some federal funding through the federal rail resources if the state provided some money, and so we helped front some money to help garner those federal funds and complete that safety project. And there were a number of commercial businesses relying on the rail transportation through different product for finishing inputs to their operations there. And then you'll see a couple of other operations here that you might recognize from some press releases over the last fiscal year issued here. So that rounds out our presentation today. We did include in an appendix some information on two other programs that are equally important, but just have a little bit different approaches them with regard to their timeline and their expectations. But we want to include those just so they're not overlooked, and also just leave them here in respect to your time in case you'd like additional information that we could follow up on with that. So with that, we're glad to take any questions. I want to thank you for all the time and support.
Thank you very much, Andy. Any questions from members? Chair Watson.
I just want to comment on the great job that you all did with the Port of Baltimore commercial assistance that you provided. We didn't, a lot of times the delegates hear a lot of complaints about some of the state programs that are dispersed on an emergency basis, but I know my office didn't hear any. So thank you for the very fast and effective job that you did there.
We appreciate that. Thank you for all the support throughout that. It was totally a tremendous team effort.
Yeah, I just will echo those comments. I was in my notes to say you do a great job in retaining those businesses in the port during this difficult time. So thank you so much. Will Jen have any comments, or you cover everything, Andy?
I believe we covered everything.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And appreciate the update. And next and final agency is Meridian Management Group. Stan Tucker, are you here, Stan? My good friend, Mr. Tucker.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Okay. You have the floor, sir.
Okay. We sent you guys a PowerPoint as well. Do you all have that?
Yes.
Okay. Could you put that up, please?
You should
Thank
see
you.
that now.
Okay. So what I like to do today, I don't want to do all of the talking on my team, if you will. I have Tim Smoot, who's a executive director, finance, running our finance programs. I have Alex Laguana. Did I do that? Alex Arana with me, who handles special aspects of our strategy. We have several components that we manage. The Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority. We have managed this fund. It was funded, if you will, or early on by the state legislature, specifically the Black Caucus, to provide working capital financing for government contracts. We also have the Maryland Casino Business Investment Fund, which there's a little bit more information we have as well. So next slide, please. Here is we've learned over the years that capitalism without really, there's a word that's left out, adequate capital does not work. And over the years, and still to today, minority and women-owned businesses just don't get access to the kind of capital and the size of capital that really help their businesses grow. And it's been laid out in numerous studies about the lack of access to capital to our community, not only in Maryland, really throughout the whole country. So our approach in addressing this problem as we develop what we call our unique strategy, and we can provide what we call a continuum of financing products for small, minority, and women-owned businesses. And that continuum includes debt and equity capital, along with surety bonding to assist these businesses. A lot of times, these businesses can get debt and by the way, I heard someone say earlier in a presentation, based on equity, minority businesses only get access to less than 2% of equity capital in their businesses, which we have two components that we could help in that regard. So what we do, we provide these various forms of capital strategically. And when I say strategically, depending on where a company is in the life cycle of his or her business, we do what we structure the financing based on the need of the company. The company may need short-term capital, long-term capital. It may need equity. It may need surety bonding. And what we try to do is to structure these various components with the company so it really works for them, not only short-term, but long-term as well. Next slide. My partner, Tim Smoot, is speaking to the next slide.
Yeah, you can move this slide number 5. Thank you. Yeah, just briefly, I'll explain the components of MPF, and they are the contract financing program, where we provide working capital, equipment financing for companies that have government contracts, contracts with regulated utilities, and contracts with regulated utilities. We also have the surety bond program, which is a complement of that. When companies need bonding in order to get contracts, we can provide up to $2.5 million of surety bond to bond companies that have contracts with government agencies, regulated utilities, and private entities. One of the things we're doing, I might mention, we're in conference with the Department of Commerce about enhancing the contract financing program where it can finance contracts with private companies as well. And that's an attempt to make the programs as flexible as they can. Okay, the guarantee program operates similar to the SBA's 7A program, which provides guarantees to banks for loans. We can guarantee up to 80% of a bank loan. And with that program as well, we're working with Commerce to encourage Commerce and legislators to allow us to support the guarantee with actual cash, where we will actually put cash into a bank to secure a loan that it's making. In that situation, we can provide up to 80% guarantee, and we won't have to fund it 100%, nor will we be burdened with administering the loan. So we think that's a better way, not only of lessening the burden of administering the loan, but also leveraging the funds a lot better. Okay, and those guarantees in the past have ranged from 50% to 80%. The equity participation investment program, we can actually buy an interest in the company by buying stock, by entering into a SAFE agreement or offering some convertible debt. Okay, so we have a number of ways where we can loan money and invest money in companies, and it's not unusual for a company to have loans from two different components of the program simultaneously. You can go to slide 6. So over the past 3 years, from the beginning of fiscal 23 to the end of fiscal 24, the program has done a number of things. It's provided 102 loans to the tune of $12 million. The average loan size is $330,000, and they range from $50,000 to $1.5 million. So there's a wide range. There's no sort of method to or rationale to the widespread. Small companies need lesser money. Larger companies need more money. So there's no rationale to that. The loan loss rate over that period was 4%. And I wanted to comment on the previous presentation where they said $7.1 million was delinquent. We just received a report on that on Monday and noticed that there are a number of companies that are included in that batch that are part of the equity participation investment program. So typically with that program, you're not required to make monthly payments, but you're generally, we get our money back by the companies refinancing the equity or selling the company, and we get a portion of the proceeds from that company. So while they're not paying, they're not really scheduled to pay during the interim, because that's just not the way that facility works. And there are also a number of companies that have been, the loans have been modified and restructured already. So we have to get with the department and reconcile those numbers. Over the years, I think Stanley was mentioning, we've been recognized as a national model, and there are other jurisdictions that are talking to us about setting up a MSBIFA program in their state, currently the state of Connecticut, namely. But we've been recognized in the past by the Wall Street Journal, the Insights Center for Community Economic Development, and the Center for Regional Economic Competitiveness as being one of the most creative and innovative financing programs in the country. Johns Hopkins also recognized us back in 2017 for being the most active non-bank lender for minority businesses. So we take pride in doing that, and to give the General Assembly kudos, and the governors as well, for giving us the opportunity to make these programs as flexible and as useful as possible to get around the situations where access to capital has been just a big problem for minorities and women in particular. The financing diversity, the number of loans and investments made to minority business has been 75% of the portfolio, and 50% of the number of financings were made to women businesses. You can go to slide number 8. So this is just a breakdown of the $12.2 million. Again, about 75% to minority businesses. We have some work to do in the Asian and Hispanic communities. Matter of fact, I just hired a young lady who's Hispanic from down in Southern Maryland that is going to help us in that vein. And in terms of gender, 50% of the loans were made to women businesses, and 29%, almost 30% of the financing dollars have gone to. I'll move on to slide. What I don't want to do, I don't want to go and rehash what Andy Fish, his presentation. He talked a lot about MSBIFA, and what I'll try to do is move on to McBIF so that I don't duplicate the information. So if you can go to slide 16. Yeah, just as a background, you know, the VLT program was generated, was really a brain trust of MMG a couple of decades ago when we talked about gaming coming to Maryland, and we convinced the General Assembly, particularly the Black Caucus, to introduce legislation that requires the casinos to put aside 1.5% of the funds generated from slot machines into the Treasury to be used to finance small businesses across the state. And that's worked out very well. While we're only one of the fund managers, overall, the VLT program has deployed about $125 million, you know, to businesses all across Maryland, which is a good thing. We and the fund managers aren't in competition with each other. We work together very well. Matter of fact, we collaborated on a transaction in Laurel just a month or so ago, a Jersey Mike's franchise, where we together invested $720,000 to open up the Jersey Mike's franchise. So we work well together, and yeah, we're not quite in competition with each other as maybe the private sector believes. Next slide. terms of ethnicity, 83% of the funds have gone to minority businesses. 26% have gone to non-minorities. And in terms of gender, this is a scenario that women would be proud. We've been working towards this for quite some time, where really the allocation of loans and dollar amounts have been pretty evenly split, between men and women. So we think we're doing a good job at that. We're getting a lot of help from a lot of the women's groups across the state. From a geographical standpoint, Baltimore City is sort of the leader in terms of the percentage of dollars that go to Baltimore City, 22%. Prince George's County at 14%, Baltimore County at 18%, and Montgomery County at 12% is some of the largest. And that's a little bit of a turnaround. Prince George's County for probably the last 15 years has been the leading group or county to receive funds from MMG's MPF program. And I'll move on to if you could move on to page 21. In terms of ethnic dispersion, African Americans received 67% of the funds, females 12%. White-owned companies 26% of the funds, and another 7% for other minorities. And MPF has deployed almost $13 million over the past 3 years to companies in Maryland. Okay, slide 24. This is just a breakdown by year of the activity in the MPF program. It's been pretty steady the last 2 years. During 22, as the pandemic was winding down, the program slowed down a bit because there was a lot of free money, a lot of cheap money available in the marketplace. I'll bounce back real quick, and then I'll wrap up to talk about in the MPF programs. I mentioned a couple of new initiatives. There were 2 that I didn't mention, and one is to help expedite the processing in a lot of cases. What the department and MMG are collaborating on is providing internal approval for loans up to $250,000, so they don't have to go to the loan committee. The loan committee meets every the second and fourth Thursday in every month. And sometimes, businesses get caught up in the interim, and if they're not on time with their application, it has to wait, maybe 3 weeks or so. So the department is preparing to set up an internal loan committee, and MMG will make a presentation to that internal committee to get loans approved more quickly. So they're working quickly towards that. As well, the loans are going to be increased for the maximum amount of $2 million to $3 million in the contract financing, equity programs, loan guarantee program. And in the surety bond program, which has a max of $2.5 million now, we're looking to increase that to $5 million. So we're trying to increase the capacity so we can reach more businesses. Because in the past, we found out that a lot of the companies reach a certain level, and they need, in order to become a large small business, for lack of a better term, they need an additional tranche of capital. So the department and MMG are gearing up to entertain that request. So I'll wrap it up there, and Stanley and I either will answer any questions you may have. Thank you for your time and attention in the matter.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Smoot. Appreciate your presentation. If I have one comment, looking at one of your charts where the counties you are involved with, being representative from Charles County, being a little parochial, I see Charles County on your chart. I see zero transactions, Southern Maryland. I don't see it, didn't see St. Mary's or Calvert. So hopefully you can get to my region and help a lot of our businesses. And I reach out to you on a separate cover to kind of discuss that more with you. So just comment from me. Any members have any other
We would welcome your help, Senator.
I'm sorry?
We would welcome your help.
Okay, yes, no, definitely. Okay, okay, seeing no more comments or questions. I just want to thank everyone for being here today. Want to give special thanks to our two committee analysts, which make our job so much easier. Elizabeth Wabel and Heather McDonough, thank you all so much for all that you do and all the members that are here. And with that, I'll turn over to Chair Watson to make final closing comments.
Thank you very much, Chair Ellis. You all of you put on a wonderful presentation today with a lot of good information. We appreciate too the PowerPoints that you provided because they're easy reference for us throughout the year and also for our colleagues when we have questions. So thank you for the fine job that you did today, and we will maybe see you soon in session.
Thank you all. We appreciate you.
All right, we are adjourned.